make out that this is pleasurable for her. And in fact, when you watch these images, what is amazing about this is that the woman is very, very focused on not being ruptured. And sometimes off camera you hear them say, "Hey honey, moan," because she forgets, because she's trying not to be ruptured, because she's being penetrated for a long time with a penis that is erect through often Viagra. So I want you to think what that does to the body. Next one. A popular theme is DP, double penetration or triple penetration. Now I want you to think about this for a minute. I want you to think about the bodies of these women and what it means to have boundaries and borders, what the human body can tolerate. This is a standard movie. One woman, 3 men. She is orally, anally and vaginally penetrated at the same time. And then, for a long time. And then the climax of the movie is they all pull out and they ejaculate on her face or on her body. Now, the new thing they call it is pink-eyeing, where they're ejaculating into her eyes. This is becoming also popular. And I want you to think for a minute what it means to have that done to your body. And I have to tell you, I was giving a talk of this in a prestigious New England college, and one of the professors was there who's written a lot of pro-pornography stuff. And she stood up and she said, "You know, I don't know what's the problem here. Lots of women do exploited labour. What's the difference between this and waiting tables?" And you know what my answer to that is? If you don't know, I don't think I have any words to explain it. If you can't feel that in your body, of what the degradation, because sometimes when you watch these movies, afterwards, the woman does not know what to do with herself. She really doesn't. She just lies there and she doesn't know what to do. She can barely pull herself off. Sometimes you see in these women's faces such a look of desperation, it makes you want to die on the spot. These are not actresses. These are women who have very few choices, many of whom have been sexually abused as children. And let me tell you, I watched a very interesting interview with some women from pornography. Now, you know when you see anything on E! Entertainment or HBO with women from pornography, you understand they're on the job when they're doing the interview. Right? You're not going to get some insightful analysis. But what was very interesting, they all basically said the same thing. They all said, you know, I signed the contract, I'm willing, it's my consent, but something happened to me that day on the set. That first day, something crossed over in me, and I don't know what it is, but something changed. Now, I think tomorrow we'll talk about that because it's very complicated what did change. But they experienced rape on that set. And I don't care if you sign 1,000,000 fucking contracts. That's rape. They also experienced the documentation of their rape for any man to then masturbate to. So let's think about trauma. When you have a traumatic event, you hope in the best case scenario that you go through the trauma and there is some place of a door to walk out of it, to close it, to integrate it and to close it. When your trauma is forever documented, there is no closing the door. It doesn't exist. It is opened every minute of every day when men are jerking off to this. The level of trauma that must exist in this industry is profound, and there's very little documentation on this. Next one. Now, one of the latest things that's been going on for a few years is ATM, ass to mouth. Now, this is about the man ramming his penis into a woman's anus and then going straight into her mouth. And the joke is she has to eat shit. Now, as Bob once put it really well, there is no sexual arousal heightened by going from anus to mouth outside of the humiliation and debasement of that woman. What else is this about? And let me tell you, when you're in the pornography websites, it pops up over and over again, ATM. Next one. Now, in pornography, what's interesting is 1 in 4 gonzo movies released to the market last year was what they call interracial. That is, in fact, usually a white woman and a black man. Now, I can't go into the whole argument here, and there is a reading in the suggested reading that I've just wrote an article on this. Let me say, this is for white men, this is not for black men. And the only way to really understand this well is to go back to the brilliance of Andrea Dworkin, when she said, pornography is about the debasement of women. That is its sexual charge. That's what makes it arousing. Now, let's think about this. In a society with a long and ugly history of racism. What better way to watch a white woman being debased than being fucked by a carrier that all that is considered deviant, i.e. the black male body? This is pure and utter racism. And let me tell you, if this level of racism existed so overtly in any form of media, it would be an outrage. But why do we give the pornographers a free pass? Why is it all these pro-pornography feminists write about it and we say, excuse me, but that article you just wrote about race in the last postmodern journal, doesn't it affect you when you look at this? Right? This is connected. Now, next slide. When they use women of colour, it's largely Asian women. And tomorrow in the slideshow we'll be talking about this and how they keep subtextually mentioning that these women have been trafficked in, they exist for white enjoyment. Next one. Now what does pornography do? What pornography does, most importantly, is it puts lots of little scenarios in men's heads, so that wherever you are, you can activate that particular sexual scenario. Now, how do I know that? I know that because it happens to me, and I don't masturbate to these things. I cannot go to a supermarket and look at cucumbers and not think of pornography. And that is true. That is really true. Now, and every time I look at that godforsaken cucumber, what I think of myself is if this is happening to me, it is happening to men in this supermarket this very minute because they use it and they jerk off to it way more than me. They have the scenarios in their head. And every interaction between a woman and a man in pornography, and between women and women, mind you, is sexual. As in, when you've got a nanny, because you can fuck the nanny. Next. You can fuck the secretary. Next. You can fuck the maid. Next. You can fuck the nurse. Next. You can fuck the teacher. Next. Or the student. Would any of you students like to go into a professor's office for a seminar after he's just jerked off to this? Now, I want to talk about what's going on in the world of college students, as in Boink. Now, this is a section from Boink. Did anyone read that absolutely horrendous article in the New York Times last week about the college sex magazines? It was just pathetic. So let me tell you the true story behind these, instead of this really fun upbeat, because we are, after all, the morbid arm of the feminist movement. So we can't be upbeat. Not about this anyway. Right, this is Boink, which, as I said, is out of BU. Now, there have been many articles on this. There's, by the way, sex magazines also in Harvard, Vassar and Yale, just to name a few. When they started, women were clamouring